If there's one good thing that came from the Jeffrey Epstein case, it is the new awareness and interest in a 30-year-old case right here in South Africa. And I'm talking about the actual case of Gert van Rooyen and Joey Harhoff, who allegedly abducted 6 known victims. Previously, it was scoffed at when anyone would suggest that the children may have been trafficked, but with the new Jeffrey Epstein awareness and child trafficking, it is now being looked at once again. In the first video, I'm going to give you a basic introduction to Gert van Rooyen and Joey Harhoff, and the alleged victims and the circumstances surrounding their disappearances. At this point, let's start with a very quick and basic timeline on the making of Gert van Rooyen. In 1954, Gert van Rooyen goes to a reform school for stealing a car and a rifle. In 1960, Gert van Rooyen is incarcerated for stealing motor spares and clothing. In 1979, Gert van Rooyen abducted 2 girls, took them to Hartbeespoort, assaulted them and forced them to perform sexual acts, and then released them in Pretoria. Sentenced to 4 years, and finally he only served 3. In 1983, Gert divorced his wife Aletta, and in 1988, Gert starts dating Joey Harhoff. Then between August 1988 and the 11th of January 1990, Gert van Rooyen, with the help of Joey Harhoff, abducts 7 girls. And these are only the known cases. Personally, I believe there were more. Nonetheless, on the 15th of January 1990, Gert and Joey are found dead in their vehicle from gunshot wounds to the head, which is now being sold to us as a suicide that took place after being chased by the police. I'm going to stop the short timeline here and continue with the introduction to the actual known victims, and we'll discuss the rest of the timeline and the case in further videos. The first alleged known victim of Gert van Rooyen and Joey Harhoff was Tracy Lee Scott Crosley from Randburg. She was 14 years old when she was allegedly abducted by van Rooyen and Harhoff on the 1st of August 1988. Tracy Lee would have been 45 years old this year. Tracy Lee would have been one of 4 children had an older brother not died before the age of 1. Instead, she was the younger sister of 2 brothers, Sean, 9 years older, and Mark, 7 years older. There was a particularly close bond between Tracy Lee and Mark. When Tracy Lee was 10, her parents Noreen and Paul divorced. On Saturday, 30th of July 1988, Tracy Lee was taken to a doctor as she was not feeling well. On Monday, the 1st of August 1988, she stayed at home from school. Her mother suggested that she join her at work, but she said that she would stay in bed and walk to the Cresta shopping centre later. Her mother suggested that they go to the mall together during her lunch hour, but when she returned home, Tracy Lee was not at home and she found a roll of sweets and some change on a table. Tracy Lee had asked her brother Mark to walk with her to the shopping centre, but he declined, saying that he had other things to do, a decision which haunts him to this day. Tracy Lee was last seen by witnesses getting into a Volkswagen Beetle outside the Cresta shopping mall. Although Tracy Lee and Rosa Peel, I will discuss Rosa Peel much later in follow-up videos. Although the 2 of them are the only 2 girls who cannot be forensically linked to van Rooyen, it is generally accepted that she was indeed one of his victims. This belief mostly hinges on witness statements, and no other proof, forensically or otherwise, could be found to substantiate this. In the aftermath of Van Rooyen's death, there were numerous sightings, one of which placed Tracy Lee at the Chelsea Hotel in Berea, Johannesburg. None of these reports yielded any fruit, and what happened to Tracy Lee remains a mystery. As is the human nature, a number of allegations and speculations did the rounds, as Tracy Lee was the eldest of the girls who had disappeared, and while into her teens, there were the usual rumors of her having been a runaway teen. To date, neither her family nor her friends could come up with a reason why Tracy Lee would want to run away. By the time of her disappearance, her parents' divorce was ancient news. She was close to her brother, there was no note, none of her clothing was missing, and so forth. Once all the options had been weighed, one has no other option but to assume that Tracy Lee had been taken against her will, and that she was seduced, like the other girls, into leaving with Joey Haarhoff or another of Van Rooyen's allies. There is, however, a deviance from the other cases. In all the other cases, it appears as if the children were taken and disappeared into thin air in a matter of seconds or minutes. In Tracy Lee's case, there is, however, speculation that she had gotten into a vehicle but had been taken home, where she left the sweets and change on the table, collected a blanket which was at the foot end of her bed, and again left with the same person with whom she had left the Cresta Centre. All indications are, however, that she intended to return home, as the school books were left open on the table, etc. Thus, regardless of what transpired, or what she was told to make her leave with the blonde woman in the Volkswagen Beetle, Tracy Lee expected to be home again soon, and she wasn't. A lot of the information I had just given, particularly the blanket which she had taken from her bed, did not appear in the mainstream media, but was found on a Janie Allen website. Janie used to be a fairly well-known journalist in South Africa. I'm going to leave a link to her website in the description box below if you want to go read this for yourself. The second alleged victim was Fiona Harvey. 3 days before Christmas 1988, Fiona was sent to buy milk from a nearby store. She never returned. A witness reported that she was talking to a man in a white Ford Bantam bakkie. It was later confirmed to belong to Gert van Rooyen. Fiona was 12 when she disappeared. It must be remembered that in 1988 it was not uncommon for children to be sent on errands, walk to friends' houses, or to play outside of their yards. White suburbia was considered safe then. Fiona lived in Pietermaritzburg, which still today is nicknamed Sleepy City. Fiona would have turned 43 this year. There had been 2 sightings of Fiona Harvey after the death of Van Rooyen. The first sighting has been talked about in the media, and the second is one I found by doing some research. The first sighting happened on the 7th of May 1990, when a businessman, Johan Blanchet, reported spotting Fiona Harvey, a dead poacher, and Annemarie Wapenaar in Lusaka, Zambia. We'll discuss this further in part 2 or 3 when we discuss the actual case. The second reference to a sighting of Fiona was an obscure post I found on Facebook. The lady said that it bothered her that in 1989 she was on a flight to the Caprivi, she did not say from where, and with her on the military plane was a middle-aged couple with a blonde girl of approximately 12. At first she thought the couple was the child's grandparents, but the child did not look happy, and there was very little interaction between the child and the couple. Later, she saw photographs of Fiona and was sure that it could have been her. Unfortunately, I did not copy and paste the post and now cannot find it. Something noteworthy, and which we shall also discuss further at a later stage, is the fact that Fiona Harvey is an adopted child, and thus police were not able to collect DNA from her parents for their records. The third girl allegedly abducted by Gert van Rooyen and Joey Haroff was Joan Horn. On the 7th of June 1989, Joan Horn, 12 at the time, and two friends were walking to a dog show when a white Ford Bantam Bucky with a blonde woman of approximately 40 stopped and offered Joan 20 rand to show her where someplace was. Joan got in and was never seen again. The woman was later identified as Joey Haroff. Joan would have turned 42 this year. Our investigation turned up that Joan was the only girl mentioned by name when Flippy van Rooyen, Gert van Rooyen's son, whom I will also discuss a little more further on, made a statement during his incarceration saying that Joan was strangled by van Rooyen. Again, we discovered that Joan was an adopted child, thus no DNA could be collected from her parents. The two of the other victims were Adette Boucher and Annemarie Wapenaar. Adette Boucher and her best friend Annemarie Wapenaar were abducted by Gert van Rooyen and Joey Haroff on the 22nd of September 1989. Adette was 11 and Annemarie 12 when they were abducted. Adette would have turned 39 this year on the 13th of February. The girls had walked home, Adette would have turned 41 in 2019 on the 13th of February. The girls had walked home from school and decided to go for a swim near Adette's house. We unearthed a few things which were not made public in the media. One of the first things we found was a Facebook post in which Natasha Boucher states that both Gert and Joey were known to the children before the abduction. This matter will be discussed further in either part 2 or 3 because I have more information in regards to this than mentioned elsewhere. The last known successfully abducted victim, let me put it like this was Yolanda Wessels. On the 3rd of November 1989, Yolanda Wessels, the 13-year-old niece of Van Rooyen's partner Joey Haroff, disappeared. Joey Haroff's sister Babs gave birth to Yolanda when she was 40 years old. Yolanda was one of 5 children, all girls. Babs passed away 2 years ago, probably about 3 years ago by now. I'm not going to speak much about Yolanda Wessels at this point, as there are a number of allegations which came out during formal investigations as well as during our personal investigations, and I will discuss that under the actual case and investigation in part 2 or 3. There were other known victims, namely Joan Boyson. It's alleged that Rosa Peel was one of Gert van Rooyen's victims, and then one other girl, although it is our belief that there were many others. But for this video, I'm already exceeding my time limit of 15 minutes, so we shall discuss this in follow-up parts on the saga.